Dude, so obviously it's July 2nd right now, and July 4th always makes me think of a movie, but it is just kismet timing that we are about to talk about a game and a specific movie at the same time. Do you know what I'm referring to?
Well, that's got to be Independence Day, brother.
It is absolutely Independence Day because, as you know, you were in town and we were freaking out about getting ready to go to the Bengals game. And then we double freaked out because the government was shooting down spy balloons that looked like they might have been aliens. And so you were like, well, that's crazy. And we should probably watch an alien movie before we go to this game. And so we watched Independence Day and we had a great time.
Everything was extremely hush hush back then, and I remember having a teensy bit of anxiety flying back to Colorado after this incredible win over the Bengals because they were like closing airspace over Montana. There
Yeah.
were F-16s flying around shooting unidentified flying objects down with missiles. It was the perfect time to watch Independence Day, and for those of you out here who are looking for something to do this July 4th, I mean, you can't do any better than watching the movie Independence Day, which, by the way, only a 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. Absolutely absurd. An utterly outrageous. I mean, that's a miscarriage of justice right there, if I've ever seen one.
It's unbelievable. It's one of the most like universally appealing movies. It's got action, it's got romance, it's got mystery, it's got big bad guys that you definitely want to root against. Like it's got everything. And it's got big time actors, Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. Like, are you
Mm.
kidding me? And
It
I mean Bill
says
Pullman.
it
I,
says the
it's
plot is so thin, and so is the character development. And I just completely disagree with that. All of the characters that you just mentioned, these actors really bring those characters to life. I mean, you
Michael
talking
K.
about
Fox.
Will Smith's arc, Bill Pullman's arc as the president, who's just a dumb fighter jock who then ends up being the leader of the free world and gives that amazing speech at the end of the movie. Holy shit!
How about Mary McDonnell, who plays the first lady in this, but
Uh,
as we know her and love her from Rosalind from Battlestar Galactica, she kills it in this movie. Randy Quaid as Russell, as
oh
the
man,
pilot, the like hick
yeah.
pilot that drives up there, up yours. I mean, the whole thing was just really, really well done from top to bottom, and like not like in a cheesy like I mean, they really took it seriously, which is something that it's really hard to do with that type of topic and that type of, atmosphere. But I mean, what an unbelievable movie from start to finish.
Honestly, probably one of the greatest summer blockbusters of all time. Give it a watch.
Agreed.
Happy Independence Day. Welcome in to It's Always Sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. I'm Austin. Find me on Twitter at RealBirdLawyer. Here with me, as always, on this Independence Day Eve. My co-host Taylor at Taylor_Wit on Twitter. What is going on, my friend?
Well, in Kansas City here, it is thundering pretty hard. It has been for the last like hour or so. Before we started recording, your voice, my internet did this thing where I didn't hear you for a second, and then it sounded like blah, 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 like all your words were coming out at once. Like my internet pipes are clogged. So apologies in advance if something like that happens during this episode. There won't be much I can do about that in post, but we are here to talk Chiefs.
We are here to talk Chiefs, and we are brought to you by Fansided. As always, check out the Fansided network of podcasts and content out there. They have been a huge help to us getting the podcast back on its feet after our former sponsors, went belly up because I don't know, probably some Bernie Madoff shit. Who knows?
It's
We
hard
got a
out
great,
there, man.
we got a great episode for you guys today. We've got news. We've got the Next Great American Dynasty, our ongoing project where we are recapping every playoff game in the Patrick Mahomes era. And as we already teased in the riff for this episode, it is doozy. It is Chiefs versus Bengals AFC Championship game rematch. And spoiler alert, this one went way better than the last time. And then because it's July 2nd and there's not really anything going on, we decided to dip into the old mailbag. We love actually hearing from our listeners. I know that I'm pretty scarce sometimes on our podcast Discord. We have a lot of great folks in there, and it's a great community. I just, my interest in Discord sort of comes and goes. Love all you people. Love interacting with you on Twitter.com. But sometimes I just have to limit my interaction to one app. As you all know, this is a well-documented facet of my
Mhm.
personality. I've
It
talked about
is.
it over and over again on the show. I think it's working too, by the way, to talk this out because I've been getting fewer DMs. Like people don't
Ah,
DM me as often. So I think the word is circulating out there that like don't DM Birdlaw. He's not going to answer it. So that's great. But we are going to have a mailbag episode here at the end of the show. You ready to kick this off?
let's do it.
Well, Taylor, we have to talk about Isaiah Bugs. We've been avoiding it because, frankly, neither you
Ooh.
nor I wanted to talk about exact bug. Neither you nor I wanted to talk about an alleged animal abuser slash domestic violence. Just an abuser in general. Neither of us wanted to talk about him, and now we don't have to because he has been released by the Chiefs after a string of legal troubles. Obviously, allegations, innocent until proven guilty. The legal process will play out. But at the end of the day, the things that he is accused of doing just aren't worth the bad press, especially in an offseason where the Chiefs have been getting quite a bit of bad press for a player that ultimately is a practice squad guy and didn't play after joining the Chiefs practice squad last year, didn't crack the active roster, and really didn't have a path to significant playing time this year. So long, Isaiah Bugs, good riddance.
Yeah, I mean, how are the Chiefs ever going to win another Super Bowl when they don't have this guy on the team? Like the amount of headlines and stuff, Chiefs dismiss another player, another Chiefs player in legal trouble. It's like, yeah, I get it. You guys just need your clicks and stuff, and Florio's out there talking about Mahomes retiring, and everybody's desperate to see the Chiefs fall. But Isaiah Bugs was never part of any success of this organization, and that will continue to be the case in the future.
Hmm. Well, looking, let's see. That's it. That's all the news. So let's get into the next great American dynasty. Again, this is our ongoing offseason project. We're recapping every playoff game from the Patrick Mahomes era. And this is a special one. This was you and me, our first AFC Championship game that we attended in person. I mean, the
Uh-huh.
Chiefs had gone to 5 straight AFC Championship games, and we thought, I mean, what the heck? Probably better go to one of these someday, right? Like probably better spring for a ticket. Like this would be a once in a lifetime opportunity for any other fan base. And really after the first couple in a row, I was kind of like, I mean, yeah, we'll get to one eventually, and we did.
Yeah.
We made it to this game. We're going to get right into the Chiefs system, which for those of you unfamiliar is the system that the Chiefs use when they win games. It's create drama, handle adversity, inspire hope, engage physically, finish strong, separate entirely. And even though this is your system, you are the creator and sole proprietor of this system. I'm actually hijacking the C for the first time ever. I'm taking a letter away from you because I want to
You're
set the
creating your
stage.
own
I want
drama.
to create the drama.
Yeah.
And so with your blessing, I'll kick it off.
Please go ahead.
Okay. C. Create drama. All right. How about this? Patrick Mahomes suffered a high ankle sprain 8 days before this playoff game, the
Jeez.
AFC Championship game against the Cincinnati Bengals, against the Jacksonville Jaguars. 8 days that he had to heal from an injury that typically will knock quarterbacks out for multiple games. There are a couple of instances of players playing on a high ankle sprain, quarterbacks playing on a high ankle sprain, a couple weeks afterwards. As far as I'm concerned, there's no evidence that somebody has played on a high ankle sprain in this kind of environment with this kind of turnaround.
I agree.
There you go. Drama created, right? Well, you wish, because there's more. The Cincinnati Bengals had just blown out the Bills in Buffalo, 27-10 in the snow. And remember, they had played in the regular season, obviously, the DeMar Hamlin situation. That occurred in the Bengals-Bills regular season matchup. That game ends up not being played. These two teams rematch in Buffalo in an environment that should favor, the team that's for some reason playing in lake effect snow a couple of times a year in Buffalo, New York, outdoors without a dome. And guess what? It didn't. The Bengals absolutely crushed them 27-10. It wasn't even as close as the final score. And we got from the sidelines, see y'all at Burrowhead at the end of this game. But wait.
Is
That's
there
not
more?
all. That's not all. There's more. There's more drama to create here because somehow, impossibly, the Cincinnati fucking Bengals were 3-0 against the Kansas City Chiefs with Joe Burrow quarterback in their last three matchups, which included, obviously, the AFC Championship game the year before, where the Chiefs had a huge halftime lead. They blew it. Patrick Mahomes played the worst second half, really the worst half of football in his professional career in the second half of that game. The Chiefs lose that game in overtime, and the Bengals send the Chiefs home for before the Super Bowl for only the second time in the Patrick Mahomes era, only his second AFC Championship game loss. And then, of course, they go on to lose the Super Bowl. But, look, they're back. And this game is such a tipping point because at this point, sure, the Chiefs had won a Super Bowl, but they only had that one ring with Patrick Mahomes. They were 0-3 against the Bengals. And the Bengals had just been to the Super Bowl the year before. If they beat the Chiefs and they go back to the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl, nobody's talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. They're all talking about Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, how he, in his first two full seasons, healthy seasons, has led the Bengals to back-to-back Super Bowls. He's the new Tom Brady. He's the one who's going to end up being the GOAT. All of this on the line, and our quarterback has a high ankle sprain, and none of our wide receivers are healthy, and our pets' heads are falling off. Drama created.
Good job. You were born to create drama, buddy. That was all natural. I appreciate that. I'll add a couple things. I'll add that, you mentioned the tipping point and that Burrow was going to be the next Tom Brady. You realize if Burrow had beaten Mahomes here, then Mahomes would have 4 playoff losses, 2 to Tom Brady and 2 to Joe Burrow. I mean, and Burrow obviously getting carried by his defense. That's something we've seen the old GOAT do once or twice before. I mean, it was definitely like a major tipping point in the NFL history books, not just the rivalry, not just the Mahomes era. This was the
possibility of Joe Burrow literally becoming the second coming of Tom Brady.
Yes, absolutely.
That was in play.
And look, there was a lot on the line here. Other than just Brady sorry, I said Brady because I was thinking of him, of course. Other than just Burrow and Mahomes, there was both teams were lava hot. The Chiefs were 11-1 since week 6, with the only loss coming at Cincinnati by 3 in that time. And Cincinnati was on a 10-game winning streak of their own coming into this game. So both teams, if they didn't play each other, hadn't lost since way early on in the season. I mean, they were the 2 best teams in the AFC coming into the AFC Championship, which is exactly what you want. Then you have the young quarterback debate and the young quarterback drama that happens in the AFC that's happened for the last couple of years, where Joe Burrow is another challenger to the throne. And I talked about before this game, one of the reasons I was so nervous was that if Burrow had beaten Mahomes for a 4th straight time, 4-0 against him head-to-head. Look, I get it. It's a team sport. But, I don't think there would have been a ton of argument to say that Burrow didn't have a better start to his career so far than Mahomes and all this different stuff that comes with being someone's daddy, which he would have been. It absolutely would have been justified. There's, a lot of Chiefs fans got so offended when the Bengals were talking all that shit. But, I get it. They owned this team going into this game and, talk your talk. But there's more than just creating drama in the Chiefs system. Of course, we have to do the rest of the system.
Before we get to that, really quick, I do want to acknowledge something that you said, because I think it's important that we finally, and with respect to the Bengals, we've dodged taking accountability for actions a number of times. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that this was probably the most important game in Chiefs history. And I mean,
I know.
I'm not even
I know it.
I know the Super Bowls are included in that, and you could put the caveat non-Super Bowl game on it,
55,
but I'm not even sure that's obviously Tampa, and that didn't. But that just made this one even more important because we didn't win 55. To have two dads.
It's 2024. That's acceptable.
There's nothing wrong with that, but in a sports context, it is not good to have 2 dads. Okay,
that's fine.
And so
someone's going to clip that and roast you for it. But no, that's
if I ever run for office, it's probably going to get taken out of context. But it is 2024. Buddy, there's nothing wrong with that.
If you run for office, I'm nuking the whole pot first.
No, that's completely fair. No, that's fair.
We can't be having that.
The thing is, we can acknowledge it now. With this being in the distant past and knowing the outcome of this game now, this game was literally the Bengals would be our dads and probably were never. I
Yeah.
it's
Momentum
hard to
wise.
it's hard to come back from losing four
Mm-hmm.
straight times to a team
Mm-hmm.
and losing back-to-back AFC Championships games to them. We know because we've done that to some other teams. We've done
Right.
it to the 49ers, beating them twice in
Oh,
the Super Bowl in a couple of years. We've done it to
we're
the
about to
Bills,
watch what
beating them
happens to the Bills after what we just did to
right
them.
three
Yes.
times in the playoffs in 4 seasons.
Yes.
I mean, we've done it to some other teams, and it's hard to come back from that. This was I know it was important for us to downplay the significance of it before the game. It was important for us to downplay the significance of the game for years afterwards. We can acknowledge it now. This
Yeah.
was an insanely important game. How did the Chiefs respond?
Insanely important. So, of course, after you create all that drama, now you've got to handle the adversity. And the Chiefs forced a quick punt to start the game. Frank Clark came up with a sack of Burrow on third down, and that's something that the Chiefs had not been able to do very much in all of those previous three losses against Joe Burrow. They just couldn't seem to get their hands on him when it mattered. And for a guy that, had so many sacks, and if he wasn't always at the very, very top of the NFL sack list, he was always very close, Joe Burrow. To get him down on the ground on the very first drive on defense was a good portent of things to come. Keep a little note of that, of sacking Joe Burrow, because it's going to come up, again. But then, of course, it's not just that. It's not just the sack. And then on offense, the Chiefs did almost hit a deep ball to Kadarius Toney for a touchdown. He was had the ball, fell down in the end zone, kind of squished it between like his chest and his arms on his way down. Classic Kadarius Toney. Doesn't come up with a touchdown, but Chiefs were looking aggressive on offense. It was fine. They ended up kicking a field goal for a 3-0 lead. So adversity of the moment of making sure that the Bengals didn't come out and pretend like they were the Chiefs' daddies or anything. I mean, they get the stop on defense. They get a good, productive offensive drive that almost went for six. They end up getting three. I would say they handled the adversity of the moment pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to again take into account like everything that was going on coming into this game, and the Chiefs were thinking about all this, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
again, this is not the three-time Super Bowl champs that we have
Nope.
today. This is a team with one Super Bowl ring who had gotten blown out in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and had lost an AFC Championship game where they choked the
Yeah,
year before.
hard. Yep.
And you know, they were
In this spot
aware,
to that team. I mean,
they
the
were
exact.
aware
Yeah.
exactly. They were aware of the history, and they knew that they had lost to this team three times in a row. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think the pressure was absolutely on the Chiefs, and how they responded early in this game showed you that, hey, they were going to come to play.
It was absolutely. And so for I inspire hope, we're going to hit more of the same. The next Bengals possession starts off on a second down play. Willie Gay and Frank Clark split a sack. And then Chris Jones finishes up the drive on his own and gets his first career playoff sack on his, what was it, 17th game, 16th game at
playoff
that
game.
time? Yeah, 16th playoff game, first career sack. It was a big deal for him. It was a big deal, like talking point, because of how good he is. It's not sometimes when you can kind of make fun of a player for not performing in the biggest stages or doing whatever, that player isn't necessarily a big play player, a big moment player. Chris Jones was absolutely that. He had been batting down passes in the Super Bowl for years. He had been doing his thing. He just hadn't come up with a playoff sack. And so, of course, he gets the sack on third down there. Big, big, big moment for Arrowhead crowd. I mean, inspiring, of course, because now it's two drives into the game, and the Chiefs has three sacks on Joe Burrow, and they've forced two punts. So that is, as good as you can ask for out of those guys for all the trouble they had bringing him down earlier. It was just such a welcome sign and so inspiring to see the Chiefs come out and kill it.
Yeah, and especially because you could kind of tell early on uh, that this was not going to be a high scoring game. For one thing,
Right.
I mean, Arrowhead in January, it's going to be cold. It's almost always going to be. I mean, it's obviously it's outside. It's at night. It's almost always going to be lower scoring than a game in October when it's 70 degrees.
Yeah.
Uh, the ball was, super heavy. And Harrison Butker talked after the game about how hard it was to kick. It was
Right.
tough for both teams, but it was especially inspiring to see the defense step up because on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, guys were dropping like flies. The Chiefs were
Mm-hmm.
losing offensive skill
Good point.
players left and right. Um, but Cole Hardman was in this game very briefly. Juju was banged up. Travis Kelce almost didn't play in this game.
Ugh.
And, players were in and out. Marcus Kemp ended up getting snaps in the second half of this game. And so, all that on top of the fact that the quarterback is playing with a high ankle sprain and clearly doesn't have his normal mobility. I mean, how could he? He was getting around fine, but you could
Right.
see him kind of limping back to the sidelines after each drive. And, in that situation, one side of the ball has to step up, and the defense absolutely did it. Inspired hope, got the team going.
Absolutely. And the Kelsey thing, we talked about this a lot around the game, but he got hurt on the last play of practice, which is if you're ever going to get hurt before a big game, that's the worst play to get hurt on because the team hasn't practiced at all without you, and there's the shortest amount of potential recovery
Right.
time to be able to play. I mean, other than like the first snap of the game or like the seventh snap on defense for the Honey Badger against the Bills or something like that, like, other than a really quick live game injury, getting hurt on the last snap of practice was just, we all immediately didn't know what his status was, and then of course when you and I were in the stadium and he was warming up, we got a little excited, we got a little hype video going because he looked like he was ready to roll. But yeah, Mahomes also, as you mentioned, was coming off the ankle injury, so like the two Hall of Famers on the Chiefs offense are way less than 100% at this groundbreaking, must win, biggest game of all time. You called it the biggest game in Chiefs history. And probably the two best players in Chiefs history were banged up. It was insane. We're gonna keep sprinkling in create drama throughout this thing because there was too much drama to go around. It couldn't all be shoved at the beginning. So you get to eat, you get to engage physically. And the Chiefs get the ball back after the Bengals punt. They march down the field. Isaiah Pacheco scores a 10 or so yard rushing touchdown, but there was frankly, a complete bullshit hold call on Andrew Wiley that I don't know what Ron Torbert was seeing or calling there, but it was not good. And so that brought it back, and that was third down. The Chiefs had to settle for a field goal, so that puts them up 6-0. And then on the next Bengals possession, George Karlaftis picks up the Chiefs' fourth sack of the first half. We're a couple minutes into the second quarter, and he goes and eats a Burrow sack lunch, and you're just thinking, man, good thing for Spags because that Chiefs, those guys on defense just ate all. I mean, of course, this postseason was like a classic. This one and the 23 one were just so good for the Chiefs defense, but this was a great showing by them. And then the Bengals do come back. They've got some nice players. A couple big catches by Tyler Boyd got him in field goal range. They didn't convert their third down. Evan McPherson makes it 6-3 Chiefs, and then the Chiefs get the ball back and two passes to Marquez Valdez-Scantling for 11 and 29 yards were the big plays on the next Chiefs drive. MVS, we'll talk about him, but with everybody else dropping like flies, as you said, on offense, especially the wide receivers, he had a monster game. His best game probably as a pro, definitely as a Chief. And so he got a big one on the left sideline for the 29 yards. There was a 4th-and-1 from the 19 that the Chiefs lined up to go for, and they were going to kind of look like they would maybe run, and then Mahomes kind of drifted over to the right and then did like a little back foot, but still a laser because he's Mahomes. But it was not like a step into a throw. It was like a back foot, but then put a bunch of mustard on it and found Travis Kelce, who had beaten Jesse Bates in coverage for the touchdown. And I mean, that place went wild. We went wild. Everything was pandemonium. It was a 4th down play, which is always the best time to score a touchdown anyway, because you drop that ball and it's turnover. I mean, it's as big as it gets. So then there's about 2 minutes to go in the first half. Burrow throws an interception to Jalen Watson. Really, really nice play by the rookie there. But the Chiefs couldn't take advantage of it. They tried some passes, 3 straight incomplete passes, some drops, some bad stuff. They punt it right back. And then with a couple really seconds to go. The Bengals drive down the field right before the half. They complete a long pass to T. Higgins for about 20, I think it was 29 or 28 yards or something. And they had first and goal from the 5 with 11 seconds left. And so, they're throwing. You're thinking they're probably, if they're not going to score a touchdown, they definitely should get 3 cracks at it, just given, you've got 11 seconds and a couple throws, but they only have a short middle, like a throwaway basically on 2nd and 5. And then with 7 seconds left, they do complete the pass, but it's to Samaje Perine. He gets lit up by Trent McDuffie and Joshua Williams, loses a yard out of bounds, and they end up kicking the field goal. And that's the way the first half ended. And it was a 13-6 Chiefs lead at half. Now, this whole section here that I just said, that little back and forth, I put that all under engage physically because, boy, this game was a physical brawl between both teams. A 7-point lead felt like it probably should have been 14 or 21, given the way that the Chiefs had really dominated both ends of the ball. They definitely moved it easier than the Bengals did on offense, and they definitely put way more pressure on the Bengals offense. But they're up 7. How were you feeling 30 minutes into this game?
Felt cold in Arrowhead
Yeah.
at halftime of this game because it felt like there were some missed opportunities, and obviously the playoff losses that stand out to you are the ones where inevitably the team could have done more. And famously, the year before, right before halftime, the Chiefs have a chance to score a touchdown to put up an insurmountable lead, essentially, and end up not even getting a field goal because Tyreek Hill gets stopped short of the end zone. They don't have time to run another play, and they don't get anything out of it. It felt like this huge momentum shift. Them going down and getting a field goal didn't necessarily feel like that, but it certainly did feel like, despite the fact the Chiefs were dominating the game, it was a one-score game on the scoreboard. And even though the defense was playing well, this was really before we still couldn't fully trust the defense, right? Like
they're young.
This is
unproven.
This is still a bunch of unproven rookie players who were great in the first half. I mean, you mentioned George Karlaftis, Jalen Watson had an interception in the first half. Juan Thornhill had an interception in the first half, and it got overturned because of a DPI penalty on Brian Cook away from the play. But you couldn't trust this young defense to hold a one-score lead for 30 minutes. I mean, it's not enough, and it felt like the Chiefs should be up more. I will say there were some encouraging signs in this first half. I mean, you mentioned the 4th down, go for it call. I mean, they were on the Cincinnati 14. So you're going to the end zone on 4th and 1. Now, of course, the Chiefs have had some interesting adventures in short yardage over the last couple of seasons. But, I mean, to call a pass play, or at least for Mahomes to turn it into a pass play and a scramble, and then throw, not quite a 50-50 ball, but I mean, a go up and get it ball for Travis Kelce in the end zone on 4th down. I mean, like you mentioned, like you're in field goal range, and fourth down and 1 at the 14. I mean, if you can run a play for 2 yards, you're picking it up and you've got a chance to convert another first down to get goal to go. I mean, like there's just so many things that can go wrong if you're going for the end zone on 4th and 1 for the 14, and they converted it for a touchdown. Yeah. So they did take advantage there, but it really felt like, I mean, it was so hard to feel confident about how this game was going to go at halftime based on what had happened the year before and based on what had happened in the first half. And
how about the week before with the injury? I mean, everything.
Exactly. All of it. And we've talked about this before, but this game was a real test for the Arrowhead crowd. We've all been there. Yeah. Arrowhead is a great stadium. It's a great stadium, especially when things are going well. But there's a lot of trauma that this fan base has endured, and that sometimes does manifest itself the other way, which is, in these types of situations, the stadium can get a little bit tight and the fans can get a little bit tight. And I don't want you guys, I don't want you guys to take offense at that. I'm not talking about you specifically, dear listener. I'm just talking about the fan base in general can get a little bit tight. And it felt a little bit tight at halftime because of the missed opportunities on both sides of the ball for the Chiefs.
Couldn't agree more. The tightest I've ever felt was the Texans game, playoff game.
Yeah, sure.
That was more than tight. That was like
That
devastating.
was
But
sure. We were into almost into acceptance
yep,
at that
yep,
point. Like, holy
yep,
fuck, we blew it.
we blew it.
We're never
We
gonna
blew
win
it
the big
hard.
one.
We're cursed. We're horrible. Yeah, but things worked out. So we're now on finish strong, and I just recapped the first half for the first four letters. So we're gonna kind of move this thing along. The Bengals tied the game at 13 coming out of half. They were only down 7. They get the touchdown. The Chiefs converted 3 third downs, including a 19-yarder to MVS on 3rd and 10. Took a 20-13 lead, feeling pretty good. Mind you, Mahomes still 1 week removed from that ankle, as we've been talking about this whole recap.
Uh-huh.
So you're kind of just every drive on both sides of the ball is kind of bated breath because the Chiefs haven't ridden their defense to a Super Bowl title yet, and the offense is still banged up. So like, what are they going to lean on? Like, it's stressful. Of course it is. And the Chiefs, for their part, the defense forces another quick Bengals punt. They really came up big time and time again on 3rd down in this game, and then Mahomes makes his only big mistake of the game. Just straight up drops the ball. He's back to pass, squirts out of his hand. Not a strip sack. He didn't really have a ton of pressure, but of course Sam Hubbard jumps on it. Bengals get the ball back, and when you give a playoff team a chance like that, they're usually going to convert, and they did. They had a 4th and 6 and just threw up an absolute prayer to Jamar Chase, who came down with it for a 35-yard gain. They punched in a couple plays later. Game's tied at 20. The Chiefs just had the ball up 7, and you were thinking they're probably going to go down, probably get a field goal, maybe a touchdown, probably put this game out of. And then as you're thinking that, ball squirts out, game's tied. It was a quite the move there. But you know, there's still parts of the game left, but they didn't maybe finish as strong during that stretch as they normally do.
Yeah, I wondered when you were gonna get to the finish strong part. It's funny because the cheat system, it works every time. But sometimes it requires a little bit of massaging to make it work optimally. This was a this was probably the tightest I think I've ever experienced the stadium. I'd say the Texans game, but that whole thing went from the game's completely out of hand to we're winning
It was
so
pandemonium.
so fast
Yeah,
that
and
like I don't
fast.
know I
Yeah.
don't know that there was that much time for really to sink in. This game, because of how it because of the history, the teams having played each other the previous year, the Bengals being 3-0 against us, the quarterback Mahomes being injured, all of those things playing into it, the way that, the game had kind of gone into halftime with the Chiefs physically dominating but only being up 1, Bengals immediately coming out and tying the game. I mean, this to me is probably the tightest I've ever felt Arrowhead to be like. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure what possessed me to do this because I'm not a naturally super optimistic person. But like we were having a conversation in the stands, just like, okay, like we need to bring the energy here. Like
Uh-huh.
whatever. Like I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not like a rah-rah guy most of the time. But like, all right, we have a home field advantage here. We got to bring it. We got to bring,
Yeah.
like we got to be loud. We got to be loud. Like we got to be loud
Yeah. Be part
before
of the
they break
142
before
decibels.
before they break the huddle. Like
Yep.
even if we're not feeling it, even if we think that this is gonna devolve into a pit of misery and despair, like we have to at least do our part to turn the game around. And I got to tell you, like it was tough there for a couple of minutes, and it
Yeah.
did feel it did feel like the old Arrowhead, the old sinking feeling coming back when the Bengals tied this game with
Well,
yeah, I mean,
how would you feel if I told you that I okey doked you and that there's a second half to finishing
what?
strong? So you thought that the Chiefs weren't finishing very strong,
I love that you
but
didn't even put that in the show doc. You really did.
no, I okey
You got
doked you.
you got me.
I was ready to pull the rug out because the system always does work. They do always finish strong, and so they were tied. The Bengals just tied it up, and then Joshua Williams picks off Burrow when the Bengals get the ball back on an unbelievable tip by Brian Cook
Yeah,
or Jalen
that's right.
Watson.
Yeah,
It was
Brian Cook.
I think it was Jalen Watson because I think it was
Is
rookie.
that right?
Man, I can see the both players tipping it, but I only remember Williams with the pick. But Williams picks off Burrow. Chiefs get the ball back, can't really do much with it there, but the Chief fence is really what's finishing strong here because Burrow gets the ball back again in a tie game. 2:30 to go on the road in the house that you just won by 3 the year before to go to the Super Bowl. But he couldn't make it happen. Chris Jones comes up with his second career playoff sack. Pretty good time for it. On 3rd and 8 with 2 minutes to go in a playoff game. Pretty big time play by a big time player there. Brings Burrow to the ground. One of the all time great Chiefs images ever of
Yeah,
Chris Jones bear hugging Burrow from behind and just not letting him go. He talked about Chris was one of the most motivated players in this entire game. Talked
right.
about how he let him go the previous year or couldn't bring him down. He didn't let him go, but he couldn't finish a sack on Burrow, who ended up running for a first down the year before on a backbreaking Bengals conversion. And so he had to get this guy to the ground. And so he did. Bengals punt the ball back to the Chiefs with 39 seconds to go, and the Chiefettes has finished strong.
I love it. I love being roped up like that because I mean it's we'd like to add a little spice to the show. We'd like to keep things interesting. We've been
Yeah,
doing this long enough now that I think that's the first time you got me like that. So
I did.
congratulations to you.
Got you good.
Uh yeah, I mean, not only did Chris
What a
Jones
sequence.
blow the sack the year before, but Joe Burrow let him know about it. I mean, like he was posting
Yes.
the picture on social media, and
Yes.
even in training camp, Chris had come back and said like, all off season, like, he's basically like hitting dummies with Joe Burrow's face on it. I mean, like
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
guy
yeah.
literally the guy literally
Yeah.
was training for this exact moment. And then of course on the play, you know, famously he's freelancing. They're wanting him to duck back inside and he's like, no, I'm going to stay outside. I'm going after,
Right. He
I'm
kicked
going over the right tackle.
Karloftis or someone back into the middle because he
Dunlap,
was
Carlos Dunlap. He
Dunlap,
kicked
Carlos
Carlos
Dunlap.
Dunlap back inside
Yeah.
and then just blew right by the right tackle and sacked Joe Burrow. And it is really like sometimes there's just things that happen with this team where you're like, this is scripted. Like
Yeah,
because
right.
this can't be real, right? Like
Yes.
you have the
Yes.
guy that literally the player that let Joe Burrow slip through his fingers the year
Uh-huh.
before contributes to the Chiefs losing the game is in the same game in the same situation against the same adversary the
Yeah.
very next year
Yeah.
and he's like, no, I got this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I did my Rocky training montage. I was punching the
And
fuck
it
out of
worked.
dummies with Joe Burrow's face on it, and it worked. And I mean, same deal. I mean, this guy got his first playoff sack in 16 playoff games in the first quarter of this one, then comes up with essentially the game-winning sack. Sometimes the NFL does feel like it's scripted, but it's just
Yeah.
because the Chiefs are amazing.
It's really nice when it's scripted in your favor. I'm not sure how other teams, in fact, I am sure how other teams feel about it. But boy, for us, it is a blast. Just did want to confirm that was Brian Cook who tipped it to Joshua Williams. Just watched the replay again. That was a hell of a play by both young DBs there. And in a moment that the Chiefs absolutely had to have a big play. That was a deep ball that, remember, the Bengals had Boyd, Higgins, and Chase in this game, and Hayden Hurst, and I mean they had dudes on the offensive receiving end of the ball, and the Chiefs had a bunch of rookies. They had a bunch
Right.
of young guys. That this was not a veteran secondary by any means. It was the youngest secondary in the league, and I just can't believe in that matchup of superstar receivers versus rookie DBs how often these rookie DBs came up with a big play, and of course none bigger than that one. Now we do finally get to S separate entirely. Of course, with the 39 seconds left that the Chiefs got, that included Sky Moore returning the punt 29 yards up the right sideline with just a as big of a moment from a guy that hadn't had any big moments as you could possibly get. Really, really needed every single ounce of that return that he got because, of course, Mahomes on his bad ankle runs gets clearly pushed out of bounds by Joseph Asai.
Yeah.
That was the easiest call. Anyone who tells you that was any scripting or anything other than just the refs calling exactly what the refs always call every single game is a crybaby Bengals fan. And so sets up Butker on the game-winning 45-yard field goal into the goalpost that you and I were sitting behind. Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You and I had witnessed a AFC Championship game and an AFC Championship victory in person, separate entirely. What a cathartic victory that was.
I mean, I feel like we witnessed a miracle because it really did
I
feel
agree.
like, I mean, again, from start to finish, like we understood the stakes, whether we would publicly acknowledge the stakes of this game or not, which we would not until we did this podcast today, years after the fact. I mean, we knew what was at stake, and the Chiefs players knew what was at stake, and it just felt like there were so many opportunities for this one to slip away. And again, for the Chiefs to have two dads, for the Bengals to be, I mean, like,
You're on that one.
imagine
That's a good one. Pride Month,
imagine
baby. Oh, it's over. Oh,
it's over. It's over. But it's okay. It's still good. Uh Happy Pride, belated. Again, it just is. I mean, just conceive for a minute of a world in which the Bengals win this game, and let's say they go on and they beat the Eagles in the Super
sure.
Bowl. Now they probably wouldn't have, and then
No,
they'd be
no.
talking about Joe Burrow as the guy that can't win the big one, and
Right.
Mahomes would still have more rings, one to
But
nothing.
maybe
But
they do.
but
Maybe
maybe
they
they
do. If
do.
they can beat
Maybe
the
they do.
Chiefs, they can beat anybody.
And if the Bengals go on to win that game, I mean, the Bengals have been to back-to-back Super Bowls. They've won one. Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes have the same number of rings, and Joe Burrow has the 4-0 head-to-head advantage, including two wins of the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead over Mahomes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but like
Dad status.
that's not a world that I want to live in. And
No.
fortunately, thank God, separating entirely, we don't have to live in that world because again, the game is rigged. Sky Moore returning a punt, 29 yards. He's only in the game returning punts.
Oh,
You remember what happened when Sky Moore was returning punts earlier in the season,
yes,
Taylor?
absolutely. Yep. He kept botching them all. Botch jobs hard.
God. And he's only in the game because of injuries. I mean, he
Yeah,
literally
because he's
told the
like wide
coaching
receiver
staff,
five.
he
Yes. Don't
literally
put
told
me
the
in.
coaching staff he didn't want to go back in the game
Yes.
to return punts.
Yes.
And they were
Yeah.
like, sorry, bro, there's literally
Sorry, you're
nobody
the
else
only one.
You're the
It's
only
either
one who
you
can do
or
it.
Travis back there. So get back there. Yeah. And let me also just say for a second that talking about potential realities where your favorite team doesn't come out on top
Mm.
has nothing to do with fandom. It has nothing to do with belief. It has nothing to do with us saying that we thought the Bengals could have, should have won, or a better team, or someone's going to be out there listening to this right now. Like, I believed in the Chiefs the whole time. I knew they were going to pull it out. Like, great,
Good.
congratulations, and
I'm glad for you.
congratulations that you couldn't conceive of a world where your favorite thing didn't happen. Because in reality, there was a shitload on the line for this game, and it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that that we acknowledge anything about who deserved it or whatever. It's just saying that if the Bengals had come out on top, the world as we know it as Chiefs fans would be as not only just different, but as opposite as it really
Right.
could be.
Right.
I guarantee you, I can't guarantee this, but I guarantee you that the Chiefs don't win in 23 if they lose this game to the Bengals in 22. They're just you just at some point you lose the will, you lose
Right.
the
Right.
drive, and I think it would have sapped it. And so I'm glad we didn't get to see that. I just want to grandstand there for a bit because I know there are a lot of people out there that think that being a sports fan just means blindly saying my team's the best and going to win everything. And if you don't think that, you're crazy. But like objectively, this was crazy, the circumstances behind this game.
I mean, shoot, the 2023 team that won the Super Bowl was 11-6, and they got embarrassed on Christmas Day, and then they had to go win two games on the road. You're telling me that if that team hadn't won the Super Bowl the year before and instead of lost the Super Bowl again to the Bengals, that they would have had the mental fortitude to come through that adversity of an
I don't
11-6
think so.
season
I don't think so.
and winning games on the road and then, going
I'm
and
not
beating
sure
a
they would have gone
great team
11
in the
and
Super
6.
Bowl. I'm not sure that they would have. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, Hmm. It's fortunately not the reality that we live in. The
No.
reality that we live in is that the Chiefs
Is
win this
great.
game.
Is the
They
best.
went back to the Super Bowl. We are going to be recapping next week. The Kelsey Bowl,
Hmm.
obviously. Travis going on to play Jason at the Super Bowl, Andy Reid against Philly. A lot of narratives going into that one, but this was an absolutely massive win, and I'm glad that we get to relive it and celebrate it as it deserves. Let's do our awards. So,
Yeah.
for those of you who are unfamiliar with our awards show on this podcast, we have three different types of awards. We have our five-star men who, through their play on the field, are screaming out, "I'm a five-star man." We have our trash men.
I'm the trash man. I come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
Who, of course, are eating garbage all over the field. And we have our wild cards.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah!
Who are capable of anything. I will kick it off with the five-star man, and I will take Patrick Mahomes. I'm sorry. I know we pick Patrick Mahomes a lot, but
Mhm. He's often deserving.
you can't not give it to him in this game. 23 or 29 to 43 in this game, 326 yards and two touchdowns, no interceptions on one leg. Again, on one leg. This man had a high ankle sprain 8 days before this game. 8 days.
A bad one. A
8 days
bad one.
before this game. A bad high ankle sprain. He's playing 8 days later against a good Bengals defense, against the defensive coordinator,
Really good one.
Rumo, who dominated him, obviously, in the second half of that AFC Championship game the year before. Really frustrated him in the two regular season matchups as well. And not only did he have only one healthy leg, he had no healthy wide receivers in this game. He completed a pass to Marcus Kemp this game. Okay. He completed a pass to Marcus Kemp.
Yeah, he did.
That's all
Yes, he did.
that's all you need to know. And then on top of that, as if that wasn't five-star worthy on its own, he had the game-winning scramble again on one leg with nobody open. I mean, like, just knowing what it takes mentally to put, your body on the line. I get a trip to the Super Bowl is on the line, but
Sure.
this is a player that, that can't have felt good,
No.
that saw this is the opportunity to win this game in regulation. I've got to pick up this first down. I've got to get us in a field goal range. And obviously, Joseph Tsai pushing him out of bounds, that's a little bit of a gift. But I mean, as soon as he took off running with that ball,
Mhm.
you knew that the Chiefs were going to find a way to win this game somehow.
Yep.
Because this is what the greatest of all time does with
Yep.
one healthy leg and no healthy receivers to throw the ball to. He puts the ball in his own hands with his own 2 feet, gets it across the line, gets the Chiefs in a position to win this game in regulation with a game-winning field goal. That's a five-star man through and through.
That's
Can't
a
pick anybody else.
That's a five-star man of all time. I mean, this is GOAT shit. This is why people talk about him as one of the greatest American professional athletes of all time. He just gets the job done when he needs to get it done. I have no doubt in my mind, if that 15 yards was not called and Harrison Butker were 60 yards away instead of 45 with 8 seconds left, that Mahomes takes 7 seconds, picks up another 15 or whatever yards was necessary, or 10 or whatever, and the Chiefs still win the game. So, it just he's gonna get it done. He's gonna get the job done one way or the other, or that game goes to overtime and the Chiefs win in overtime. I mean, whatever the case may be, it's just he's a winner. That's all he does, and we're just so fortunate that we have gotten to name Patrick Mahomes as our five-star man over and over and over again on this pod because he deserves it over and over and over again. So great pick. I'm going to go with another future Hall of Famer for my five-star man. And I know you're thinking, well, there's a couple guys to choose from, actually, but I'm going to go with Chris Jones. And as you mentioned, in his 15th playoff game, getting off the schneid and getting the sack, but then also getting the second sack, the game winner, basic game winner, avenging the demon of the previous year, all the stuff that you talked about with what went down there. I mean, we could have pretty much talked about anybody on defense. Those guys were after it all game long. Animals, absolute studs in the secondary, the linebackers, the defensive line. Everybody brought it. I mean, you could also name Spags. Like they very clearly were as dialed in as they absolutely needed to be. This was an early showing of like, elite defense performance, like absolute, like could carry a team if they need to. And, they didn't really show that very much before like the 22 playoff run. Even in the 22 regular season, they had good games, but they didn't show that like, oh, this unit's capable of being, if not the best defense in the NFL, certainly a top defense. And they showed it in this game. They were unbelievable against a great team. So I'm going to go Chris Jones there, but really he's accepting the award for the rest of the defense because they were all lights out.
Absolutely. I love that. Let's go over to our trash man here. And I got to be honest with you, I really don't want to select a Chiefs player for the trash man, so I'm not going to do it.
Well, let's just right off the bat just talk about how dog shit Skyline Chili is. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck the Bengals. Fuck Joe Burrow. Fuck Skyline Chili. Suck my dick, you fucking animals. I don't fucking care. Fuck you guys. That shit sucks dick.
All right, let's spin into the wild cards. Fuck the Bengals, fuck Joe Burrow, etc. Wild cards are capable of anything, and a player that played in this game who was capable of anything will be my wild card selection is Sky Moore. 3 catches on 7 targets for 13 yards receiving. That's terrible. Probably could have been in contention for the trash man. In fact, I was ready to select him as my trash man, but then I remembered that he had a 29-yard punt return that effectively, it gave the Chiefs the chance to win this game in regulation.
Sure, absolutely.
If he fair catches that ball, the Chiefs almost they essentially. You can't completely rule it out, but with the wide receivers being who they were in this game, with the receiving options that the Chiefs had, and with Mahomes being on one leg, there's essentially no way that the Chiefs have a chance of winning this game in regulation if Sky Moore doesn't get all 29 of those yards on that punt return. This. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but he didn't want to go in the game. He didn't want to
for good reason.
For good reason, because he was absolutely awful as the punt returner when the Chiefs put him in that role early in the season. They removed him from that role, and you got to think. A professional athlete, you have to have a lot of confidence, right? But obviously, he didn't have any confidence in his ability to return punts because he was bad at it. The team essentially benched him off of punt duty, and then they came crawling back and said, "Sky Moore, you've got to return this punt." And he was like, "No, I don't want to."
They're like, everyone else is dead. You have to.
This is not going to work for me. And then it did work. That is the essence of wildcard behavior. This is really like an all-time wildcard game from Sky Moore. Literally, there is one play that he should have been awful at that he was great at, and it helped the Chiefs win the game.
I love the pick. Of course, he was extremely wild card. It's crazy to not be able to predict as well as we could not predict of how that would have gone for Sky Moore. Like it was a maddening performance. I'm going to go with another guy that really, really struggled. That the Chiefs fans, they ended up this year getting pretty over him. But boy, Marquez Valdez-Scantling for this game. 8 targets, 6 catches, 116 yards, a touchdown, a 29 long. And again, just talk about absolute necessary with Juju going down and Kadarius Toney going down. And Sky Moore being Sky Moore, McCole Hardman going down. They were down to MVS. MVS was the guy. And Lou Anarumo knew that. And the secondary of the Bengals knew that. And the other thing about MVS is, I'm sorry, as much as he wants to pretend that he's a full receiver or whatever, he's a one-trick pony. He is not a ride him over and over and over again type of guy. Most games he's lucky to get 2 catches. Like that's the nature of MVS. And for him to come up with a 100-yard game in the playoffs, the touchdown was huge. It was a 3rd down. And they absolutely had to have it. Mahomes was on one leg and made it happen again. And of course, coming off of the game the previous week against the Jags, where MVS also had a touchdown in that game, this was a mega wildcard performance by him because he's capable most days of nothing. And then in this game, capable of being having one of the best wide receiver performances in Chiefs playoff history. That is a stark difference from what we were used to out of MVS. So he is clearly a wild card in this
one. I love it. The wild card can be, it could be a guy that's, in this case, 5-star man worthy, but given the nature of MVS, the duality of MVS, yes, this was a wild card performance from him. Boy, that was a lot of fun.
Yes.
I have been looking forward to this game since we started this project. It did not disappoint. I hope you all enjoyed reliving that one with us. Let's get into the mailbag. Now, we've not gone to the mailbag for a while. This was a staple of the early show when we had no ability to craft our own content. We didn't know what we were doing in the podcast game, but it still is great to hear from our dedicated listeners. And I will kick us off with a question from our guy Casey Puerto Rican, one of our Dynasty League participants as well. Question for the pod. Rumor earlier today is that Juju Smith-Schuster would be a cut candidate in New England based on his contract. Given that news, I propose 2 end-of-the-roster wide receiver groups. Which one would you prefer, given what you know about them? Number 1, incumbents, Tony plus Sky Moore, or 2, replacements, Juju Smith-Schuster plus Nico Remigio. Which one are you taking, and why is it number 2? Oh my gosh. I actually I think it is number 2, first of all. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, Juju, the big question is health. And it's never been about his ability because he was great in the one season he was here as a Chief when he could get on the field. I mean, 16 games, 14 starts, 933 yards, only 3 touchdowns. But I mean, he was the wide receiver 1 on that team when he was healthy. Now, last year, he made it into 11 games. He only started 7. He only had 260 yards. And obviously, there were all kinds of rumors flying around when the Chiefs did not bring him back about the state of his knee. It doesn't look like it's great, but he knows the system. He's a good player. I mean, Juju last year with a blown knee and essentially, I mean, no health. His quarterback situation was literally the worst. His quarterback and offensive situation was literally the worst in the NFL. 260 yards. He still had more yards than Sky Moore, who had 244 yards. And he still had more yards than Kadarius Toney, who had 169 yards. Okay? So, and Nico Remigio, he could be anything.
Sure. Look, I will be honest. I would answer this question as number 2 if it were Juju Watkins, who is a female basketball player for the USC Trojans. I mean, this is more about addition by subtraction. This is more about me being good and not seeing Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore on this roster again. And if that means giving Nico Remigio and anybody else a shot, I'm taking that second pool. And if that's Juju, then worst case scenario is exactly where we are right now with a useless wide receiver. And best case scenario is Juju brings some of the Juju back. And I mean, so yes, I think long story short, Casey Puerto Rican, good question, bud. We are going with the replacements. Our next question is from Durdles, who is our regular on our Discord. Planning for the long term is great. Highly recommended. That said, could it be a good move for Kansas City to spend big on a great wide receiver in their prime to pair with Mahomes and just try to get as many rings as quickly as possible? I know salary cap considerations and all. New Orleans has shown you can kick that can down the road quite a bit, seemingly indefinitely, if you're creative enough. What do you think? I mean, I think the best of both worlds would be to continue to win rings constantly and also plan for the future, which is a cop-out answer. If the answer results in more rings, that's the answer I want. And so if going all in right now and winning, let's say 3 out of the next 4 Super Bowls and just getting this unbelievable 7-8 year stretch where the Chiefs completely dominate the league, but then they finally run out of money and contracts and all that stuff, and it kind of falls apart at that point. If that's going to get more Super Bowl wins than trying to plan long term and only getting 2 out of the next 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever, then I mean, either way, I want the rings. I want the ring count. I want at the end of Mahomes' run to have the most rings, and whatever gets me there is my plan. So that's my direction I'm going with.
I think the issue with this is that a great wide receiver in their prime, you can't sign that guy in free agency, right? So you either have to draft that guy yourself, and the Chiefs have taking a shot. They drafted Xavier Worthy in the first round. That's the first wide receiver dart throw they've made in the first round since they took John Baldwin.
Yeah.
And he's the fastest player in the draft. He's the fastest player in the history of the combine. His athletic testing is insane. And by the way, his tape is insane. For those of you who missed it, our conversation with Charles Goldman, friend of the show, last time. I mean, he just talked about all the great things that you see on Xavier Worthy's tape. I think the problem is you have to trade for that guy unless you're going to draft him yourself. And that becomes difficult, even if you're giving up 32nd pick, which is where the Chiefs have been picking each of the last 2 years. You have to give up the 32nd pick, probably plus something else, because teams know that if they're trading with the Kansas City Chiefs, they're getting back probably 31 or 32. You're not getting a mid first round pick, so you have to pay more if you're dealing with a team that's trading with the Chiefs. The other problem is I think the Chiefs they've had some interest, right, in some of these guys. And when Stephon Diggs was traded to the Texans, there was one team that the Bills refused to trade him to, and it was the Chiefs. And I totally get that, and I completely respect it, because why would they? But I think the problem is, even if you're willing to give up the draft capital and you're willing to give up the salary cap space, which are both significant investments, right? Like, that's a big obstacle to give up both of those things. You also have to find somebody that is willing to part with a great young wide receiver and is willing to deal that great young wide receiver to the Chiefs.
The best team in the league.
There's just a lot of obstacles there. So I think my answer to this would be, like, if theoretically this were a possible thing to do, I think it's absolutely 100% worth exploring. And I think this season will give us a lot of clarity on that, right? Like, we've talked about the importance of winning the Super Bowl this year because it gives you the three-peat. It gives you something that's never happened before. Like, and I know Stephon Diggs is kind of more towards the end of his career now. I mean, he's 30. But
there were some CeeDee Lamb rumors. Like, that would be.
I mean, if that were a possibility, right? Like, even if you have to mortgage the future a little bit, if you think it's going to win you, if you think you could almost guarantee you winning a Super Bowl this year and getting the three-peat, I think it's something that you at least have to consider. But I think there's just a lot of obstacles, practically speaking, to getting that guy if you're the Kansas City Chiefs. It's tough to do.
I think that's fair. The next one comes from longtime Bird of War, original GMF, Kaka. He's got about 4 of them here we've lined up because he's a constant mailbag participant, and we super appreciate that. First one he's got: what is your most memorable Chiefs non-playoff game? And so, most memorable for me, I usually think of memorable as kind of like pre-Mahomes, like just thinking back, So I've got some candidates first that I'm just going to quickly fire off. Both wins over New England in 14 and 17 with Alex Smith were unbelievable. As are several from the 9-0 start in 2003. Dante Hall magic, including the return against Denver, is one of the most memorable moments in my life, honestly. The Chiefs had 2 Monday Night Football punt return wins over the Chargers. 2 wins. Tamarick Vanover and Dexter McCluster, both with big time punt returns on Monday Night Football against the Chargers. Those were both very memorable for me. And then I'll also say Jamal had 2 big days, one in Oakland where he had the 4 touchdowns receiving and 1 touchdown rushing and 200 yards receiving. And then the franchise record rushing in New Orleans, I think 256 or something like that. So those were all days that I remember watching pretty much every moment of, and those are all pre-Mahomes era. I feel like I could recount almost every snap of the Mahomes era, like verbatim. Like, I just feel so locked in for that entire experience that I don't even know if I could pick one. Maybe the Rams shootout as one of the most just memorable games. Obviously it was a loss, but a lot of candidates in there. I think I'm going to go with 2017 at New England. There, again, a lot of candidates, but what that game meant for where the Chiefs were kind of measuring up against the best team in football and going into their house on banner night and unleashing this beast of a rookie running back in Kareem Hunt and Alex Smith. doing his MVP campaign where he came out and slung the ball all over the yard, and they had just drafted Mahomes, and he came out in the 17 opener and said, "Screw that, I'm going to go out and have a hell of a year before you get this guy in there." That there was just a lot going on with that game that I'll remember that one forever.
Yeah, that's a great pick. It would be very high on my list as well. As with the 2014 game, that 2014 game on Monday Night Football, I know I've talked about before, but I was at that game. And then the very next night was the Royals wildcard game, obviously, against the A's. And, that was the first Royals playoff appearance since,
85.
gosh, yeah,
85.
that's right.
29 years.
Right, exactly. So they had broken their playoff drought. And I knew I had tickets to that game too. I mean, like there were some Royals players in attendance for that game, and I remember, we beat the fuck out of Tom Brady, and there were people banging.
We're on to Cincinnati.
Those stupid walls on the Arrowhead, circle walks on the way out, chanting "Let's go Royals."
Yeah.
I mean, like, and there were people chanting "Let's go Royals," in the third and fourth quarter of that game because we beat the hell out of New England. That was a really memorable one for me, and I think like. Part of the reason it was, I mean, I'm cheating a little bit because obviously there was a Royals playoff game the very next day, but it sort of felt like, 2014, this was the second year of the Andy Reid, Alex Smith era, right? And the first year,
they
gone from 2-14, I know, and the only time they missed, but they gone from 2-14 to 11-5 the previous year, with Andy and Alex Smith. And then they come out and they beat the fuck out of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and send them on in Cincinnati. And the Royals were good and we're going to the playoffs the first time in forever. It really felt like that 48-hour stretch was, up until winning the World Series and winning the Super Bowls and so on and so forth, was like the most magical time in Kansas City sports history for me to that point.
I agree.
So that's a great one. I love that. I mean, if I was going to pick one in the Mahomes era, they're obviously all so memorable. But I feel like the first game that we saw him live, is
San Francisco.
His home debut, Week 3 of 2018 against San Francisco.
He's had a lot of big games against San Francisco. He could have picked any one of them.
He certainly has. But that was, obviously the scrambling. Running, stumbling.
Are you kidding me?
Are you kidding me? Yeah. That was great. And I got some sweet Patrick Mahomes socks at the Arrowhead merch stand at that game.
I was dressed up as Patrick Mahomes in that game.
You were dressed up as Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, it was crazy. That would be pretty high on my list. But obviously, we're literally doing a segment where we're recapping all of his playoff games. We could do a most memorable regular season games thing with him, and we could literally talk about every single one. They're all so good. But we got another one here from Original GMF. The Chiefs, for some reason, have $15.4 million in cap space right now.
For some reason.
What do we think Brett Veach should do with it? Gosh, I think they're definitely going to use some of that right on, your veteran free agents that are going to be available when camp comes around. I think Donovan Smith is a possibility. We obviously talked about this with Charles when he was on last time about how that left tackle battle is going to shake out. And right now it's between a first-year player and a second-year player. And there's always the possibility of them bringing back, the guy who started at left tackle for them during the Super Bowl season last year. They definitely could do that. I'm not saying they should do it, but they could do it. And I think that's definitely on the table. I think, usually the guys that you're bringing in this late in the season, they're like either a player that's played with you recently and kind of, knows the system, veteran guy like Donovan Smith, or like a rotational pass rusher. I think they can and should and probably will spend some of that money on like another rotational edge. I haven't looked at the free agency list to see who's still out there, but these are like these are like the Justin Houston types, right? Like he's still somehow hanging around and still like, playing at a high level. Jadeveon Clowney is now back on the like actually getting paid train, but he was this guy for a little while. It's just, that guy that, Melvin Ingram a couple years ago, obviously coming in mid-season for the Chiefs.
Terrell Suggs.
After he signed late with the Steelers, and then, the Chiefs ended up trading for him midway through the year. I think they could do that. And then we know that Brett Veach likes to keep a rainy day fund for during the season so that he can pick up guys like Terrell Suggs or Melvin Ingram or, other players that they've traded for over the years, just having a little bit of signing a Le'Veon Bell, in week 5. Didn't
Yeah, that
work
was
out.
fun.
Didn't work out, but it was a funny idea. So I think they'll definitely keep some of that cap space too. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right that looking at how camp kind of starts to play out and figuring out which positions we need to plug in a veteran at, and then go find a veteran that fits the needs and plug them in. And 15.4 million is definitely enough to where pretty much anybody that's going to be in that position to sign this late in the year is going to cost nothing. I mean, pennies. So it's really not about spending all the money at this point. They'll roll some over. They'll use some next year of this that, they need to or whatever. But no, I do think that they're not done signing veterans. They just need to make sure nobody gets hurt. Nobody is super underperforming compared to where they thought they would be. There's still some vets out there. There's still some guys that have gone unsigned this offseason that have been a little bit surprising. And, I think running back is definitely a good key there. They really don't have any running back depth. They have CEH and Pacheco. Pacheco and CEH, and that's it. So, getting a guy that's actually had any snaps at all at the NFL level would be big there. Next one, original GMF asked was, what is your favorite obscure It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia quote? We talked about this at length before recording tonight because we basically speak in Sunny quotes to each other.
Yes.
I mean, it's a very, very easy language to slip into when there's a joke that's even tangentially related to some topic that was on Sunny. We will bring up some relevant quote and both laugh about it. I think the first one that I thought of, and again, I probably, if you asked me this question 10 times, I probably would easily come up with 10 different answers, but I'm going with Frank gurgling the beer and going, "What's in it for you?" And then Matt goes, "What?" He burps and then, "What's in it for you?" During the Gang Gives Frank an Intervention. I say "What's in it for you?" like that fairly often and crack myself up every time.
I think for me, to really dig into the obscure, because to us,
there's basically not an obscure
Sunny line. Very, very few of them are obscure, especially for like the first 8 or 10 seasons. I mean, those are outside of season 1, which I haven't rewatched that much, but I mean, seasons 2 through 8, I would say all those episodes I could give you almost word for word, verbatim.
Sure, script recap.
We have done it before. I think the funny one for me that I was thinking of when we got this prompt was, I think of all the names on Sunny, and sometimes of like very obscure characters who appear like once or twice. So, for instance, in the same episode that you were talking about, Intervention, where Frank goes Donna, 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 Donna. Whenever either of us is involved or encounters somebody named Donna, that is inevitably comes.
That's how we say it.
Anybody that has a name that sounds like Donnie, you would have been the good one. Yeah, I mean, really anybody that has a name that has been referenced on the show at least once in a funny way is something that can be recycled into our lexicon. So I like that. That's a great question. And
Dr. Jinx is the name of a monkey, not a man.
We had a good laugh. We had a good laugh about that before the show. So that was a great question. Final one from original GMF. Favorite breakfast, whole meal or item on the weekend or any other time you wake up and don't have to be somewhere? I love this question, and I love breakfast food. And for me, like, I really like a good breakfast sandwich, and that could be a lot of different places. I mean, it could be, a farmer's market when I'm in Kansas City. My parents live pretty close to the Leawood McLean's. They have very good breakfast sandwiches there. I love, frankly, a good sausage egg McMuffin. That's always delicious. Wendy's has some great breakfast food. We got a Wendy's right by my house. The Chick-fil-A breakfast is insane. But I
love you into fast food breakfast, but that's true. They're all really good.
They're all delicious. But I mean, like, I will just as often, sometimes I'll wake up and it'll be whatever, like 6:30 on Saturday morning, because I just basically hardly ever sleep in. And, I'll go downstairs and I'll be super hungry. And I'm like, I just want a sandwich for breakfast. And sometimes it will look more like a lunch sandwich, but, I don't care. I'll eat that at any time of day. I'll
It'll
eat it at
look
6:30
more
in the
like a
morning.
lunch sandwich, like it
What?
is a lunch sandwich, like a
Yeah,
meat and
well,
cheese, like a
yeah,
sandwich.
yeah. But sometimes I can, you can breakfast that up. Like I could throw like a fried egg on there, and then that
Okay,
makes
yeah,
it
sure.
a little bit
Some
more
hot sauce or
breakfasty.
something.
If I got a little bacon in the fridge or something like that, I might throw it on there. But I just like to, especially since like during the pandemic, we started doing like HelloFresh, and we've done some food kits and things like that. And I feel like I understand a lot more about cooking now. So now, like if I'm hungry and I don't want to go buy a $10 breakfast sandwich
Make
because
yourself a ham and cheese.
sure, I'll just whip something up, and I don't know, that's kind of my go-to. But gosh, there's just so many good, delicious breakfast foods out there.
So I love breakfast burritos and hash browns. Breakfast burritos from Sonic or McDonald's, and the McDonald's hash browns, or some type of. I mean, first when you were talking about fast food, those are the ones that I go to. And then my mom used to make, still does, but bacon, for some reason I've never had as good a bacon as what my mom had me growing
Oh,
up
okay,
eating. I mean,
interesting.
she
Sure.
just thick and really flavorful, and like she just, whatever she did with bacon, it was always, that's kind of my favorite version of bacon. So anytime she's offering to cook any breakfast or anything like that, I make sure that some bacon's involved there. And then it's hard to beat eggs, man. It's hard to beat a fried egg or a scrambled egg. Like they're just very
Oh, eggs
classically
are good.
breakfast
Yeah.
food. And I mean, that's like, if there's some time and it's breakfast time, I like eggs and syrup a lot. Like
Interesting.
scrambled
Sure,
eggs
yeah.
and then a little pool of syrup, and kind of dipping them around in that. That was we always used to do eggs and pancakes, and I would like have too much syrup for my pancake because I was a child, and
Sure,
then
right.
I would
Yeah.
clean up the syrup with eggs, and so I really got used to those two tastes together. And sometimes then I'll do eggs without even the pancakes and just do the syrup. So
Now,
that yeah, that's my breakfast.
I actually don't know this about you. What is your preferred doneness for bacon? Is it like
Yeah, good
burned to a
question.
crisp, or
No,
where
it's
do you
not
fall on
burned
the
to a
spectrum?
crisp. It's certainly not burned to a crisp. I'm not a
Okay. All
psychopath.
right. Okay. That's good.
I do like I mean underdone bacon is also a little gross. Like the idea of it. Like you gotta cook it. It's gotta curl up. It's gotta kind of be, cooked bacon, but not to the point where it's like, I don't even really mind the not very crispy, like flabby bacon,
Look at
like
you.
that's, I just don't. I think there's a really big spectrum of bacon that I
Yeah,
really
yeah,
like.
that's
Is
fair.
kind of where I'm going. Like I don't want it to be non-cooked, and I don't want it to be burned to a crisp, but pretty much all that range in from like 20 to 80%, like that. If you give me bacon that's like anywhere in the middle,
Right.
I'm gonna have a good time.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I actually do prefer like limp bacon, like
Yeah,
that's not
sure,
crispy. I mean, like
sure.
I don't know. I mean, I don't mind. I mean, like you said, there's a wide spectrum of what I will accept.
Yes,
But if I'm
yes.
cooking bacon for myself, people will usually tell me that I've undercooked the bacon, and it'll be cooked through. Like it's safe to
Sure.
eat,
It's not,
but like
yeah, you're not giving them salmonella,
it's
but
not gonna I'm not gonna be able to break it in half, right? Like I'm gonna have to
right. I
tear
do not like that.
I'm gonna have
No.
to tear it apart,
Yep.
okay, as
Yep.
opposed to breaking it in half. So we're on the same page there. That's good.
Yes, of
I
course.
was worried about the direction that would go, but it turns out we're compatible.
We know
We're best
ball.
friends. So
We know ball.
we got one final question here from Z-Man. Kaka.
Caca.
Who would you select as an offensive presidential candidate and running mate and their platform, football related, as well as a defensive candidate and running mate? I don't think we could beat Dennis's response here on the
Caca.
Discord. We will have to pick a platform, and I could do that really quickly. But he said Kelsey's versus Bosa's, and that's just, I mean,
It's made for TV.
it just you can't get any better than that. I mean, like the Kelseys obviously would run the Bosa's out of the country in that race, because if you've ever listened to the Bosa's speak, they
It's
literally
really
sound
bad.
like they're high all the time. And
Yes,
the Kelsey
because they
brothers
are.
have the greatest podcast and most popular podcast in the world. So
And 92
obviously, if this
percenters alone would vote out. I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
I mean, they've got the Taylor Swift angle. I
Yep.
mean, they obviously would win this, but I feel like the platform. I mean, on the Bosa side, you said football related, but let's be honest, we know where the Bosa stand politically. We don't have to
Correct.
guess about what their platform would be. The
Nope.
Kelseys, I mean, we can give them a good football related platform, right? Like you mentioned it, the 92 percenters. It's quarterback sneaks. It's going for it on fourth down, baby.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
pushing the ball, like it's imposing your will on the defense. And that's exactly what the Kelseys would do if they were involved in any kind of political race with the Bosas. I mean, this would be a landslide, the likes of which this country has never seen.
Slam dunk, absolutely. It's a good year to be talking about Bosa's v Kelsey's, because that's a lot better than the choices that we have. But that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes.
It's always sunny in Chiefs Kingdom. We'll see you guys next week.